Hey, good morning, y'all. Josh of Severe Weather. Well, we are wrapping up the month of October, and things are looking very active in the Eastern U.S. today, across the tropics again, as we head into the month of November. And we've got an area of concern in the Central Caribbean that has some potential down the road to be a troublemaker here. And I'm going to talk a lot about that. I'm also going to talk about some nasty weather coming into Western Europe. And we're going to look at some temperature forecasts for tonight and in the coming days. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. And the area of concern right now is south of Puerto Rico, now dubbed Invest 97L. And I've been talking about this for a little bit now. There were a couple of systems out ahead of it which have struggled to develop, and that is opening up the potential for some development here later this week over the central and then Western Caribbean. This has a pretty good ceiling with it, and something that I think has a very decent chance of becoming a hurricane as we get into the first weekend of November here near Central America. After that, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I will start to talk about some potential at least. Really tough to make a forecast for something that hasn't yet formed. Overall, tropical models this season have had some highlights and some lowlights, but I'm going to do my best as a meteorologist to just show you what I think could occur and tell you why it may or may not happen. On the Pacific side, we have an issue as well in Central America with Tropical Storm Pilar. It is not going to make landfall across land. Wind shear is going to pick up in the next couple of days, but until it does that, we'll be producing some very heavy rain over the west coast of Central America. So both sides of Central America expected to have some very heavy rain here in the coming days. So let's take a look right now at the chart, and you can see these are really the only two systems to track. 97L has a 70% chance of development into at least a tropical depression. I think it'll obviously be higher than that, tropical storm, but the next name on the list being Vince. The 70% chance is over the next 7 days. In the short term, that chance is a little bit lower. As we get to about Thursday and Friday, I think is our best window for development. Here's Tropical Storm Pilar, and you can see it's actually expected to make a loop and then head back out over some cooler waters left in the wake of Hurricane Otis last week. And some increasing wind shear. So a few days ago, Pilar looked like it could potentially be a threat to Guatemala and the south coast of Mexico. That has, of course, changed as it took longer to develop. Now the front that's dropping through the eastern United States will push all the way down towards the Northwest Caribbean, and that is going to push Pilar back out to sea. So some better news coming in the next couple of days over western parts of Central America and Mexico, but we're not going to be done, unfortunately, as this system has a pretty good chance of developing. Worldwide, you'll see the systems on the map. This is 97L, 30% chance of development in 2 days, 70% in 7 days. 96L had a burst. It looked like it might try to do something Sunday. It no longer looks like that now. Positioned just to the east of the Bahamas and unlikely to develop. Wind shear starting to pick up. The remains of Tammy still out there. There's a slight little swirl, but unlikely to reform into a tropical system. Here's Pilar, tropical storm right now, predicted to get up to about 65 miles per hour as it makes its closest approach. We do have a tropical storm watch for El Salvador and for northwestern Nicaragua and far southwestern Honduras, but I think that's actually going to get dropped later today. And then we have a little bit of a disturbance in the east central Pacific that is unlikely to become anything tropical. The rest of the tropics are actually kind of quiet for the time being. There's a disturbance east of the Philippines, tropical wave at this point. There's also a disturbance east of Somalia, but neither of those shows a great chance of development. What actually could be a bigger problem is a pair of low pressure systems expected to cross the North Atlantic quickly and head towards the UK and Western France, the Brittany section of France. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about those systems here, non-tropical, but certainly ones to watch that could have significant impacts. So if we look at the ensembles from the European, this is the potential of tropical development, genesis into at least a depression. We already have a named storm here, Pilar. So as you can imagine, that's on the top of the chart. The European, for whatever reason, thinks there's kind of two different circulations here. And I think that's causing some problems with the initialization of the model and why it's not really developing this very quickly versus the GFS, which has not done great this year. The GFS has gotten beaten up pretty hard here, but I do think it's on to something, and we're going to take a little bit closer look. But you can see as we get to Thursday and Thursday night, we're up to a 70% plus chance of having a tropical depression. So pretty high chance in just 2 days. That chance carries west-southwestward into the southwestern Caribbean on Friday, and then towards Nicaragua and Honduras, maybe northern Costa Rica over the weekend. After that, there's a question as to whether this continues west into the Pacific, which is very possible. We saw that with Pilar. It was a depression 21 in the Atlantic side here a little while back, or finds a way to find a weakness in a ridge that's going to develop here and pull the system more northwestward, maybe towards Belize or towards even the Yucatan Peninsula, maybe even Cancun early next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but the farther off in time we get, the more uncertain things get. That's pretty much the way things are here in the tropics, or really anywhere in the world for that matter. So let's look at the wide view of the tropics here. I'm going to get my pen out to help you guys see things here. And obviously the big system on the map right now is Tropical Storm Pilar, and I'm going to zoom in and show you that one, located off to the southwest of El Salvador. That's this country here. And spinning up some pretty good convection on the west coast of Central America this morning. So very heavy rain expected there. It's also producing a local area of heavy rain over eastern Honduras and eastern Costa Rica, or Nicaragua. In the central portions of the tropics here, so kind of the Caribbean into the Southwest Atlantic, 96L right here, but you can see an approaching front and upper level trough here. This was an upper low. It's opening into a trough. That's producing strong wind shear from the southwest and keeping 96L from developing. A couple days ago, it had a small window. It missed that chance. In the Caribbean, and I'll zoom in, this is 97L, and the models are also picking up on some thunderstorms south of Jamaica. I think the two are going to consolidate somewhere in here and then head west or west-southwestward. After that, potential for it to come this way or continue this way. It's going to hit a fork in the road. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Elsewhere, we've got no convection left with the remains of Tammy, but there is a circulation with it heading this direction. It'll eventually get kicked back out. Bermuda's over here, so it's not even going to affect you in Bermuda. And we have a bit of a disturbance here, well south of the Baja of California, a very small chance to develop into anything tropical. Elsewhere in the U.S., you can see where our front is located right down in here, aloft, but at the surface, it's actually farther east. So what's happening is behind the front, we have strong southwesterly flow going over that cooler air mass that's in place. And what that's going to do is lead to some unseasonable chill, lots of cloud cover, and a little bit of rain here in the mid-Atlantic region in the Carolinas here as we head into the afternoon and nighttime hours as temperatures continue to tumble. Where I am here in Raleigh, it was a warm night last night, 70 degrees when we were out, close to 8 o'clock. It was 65 at midnight. Now we're into the 50s, and we're going to keep tumbling into the 40s, which is an extreme drop from the mid-80s into the 40s in just a 24-hour period. So people need to get ready for that. Elsewhere, we do have an upper level low dropping down through the upper Mississippi Valley. That's going to produce some snow showers as it crosses the Great Lakes later today, heads into the interior of the Northeast tonight, also producing some mountain snowfall here as we get later into night tonight, early in the day tomorrow. Then things are a lot quieter after that. Big area of high pressure dominating the west here, producing some dry weather after the snow we got here over the weekend. That will eventually yield to another storm, which is going to move into the Pac Northwest here later in the week. So that's what we'll be keeping an eye on for you guys here. But we're going to look mainly at the shorter term and the tropics here. So again, here we look at a closer view. And let me get the pen back out because I know a lot of you guys have a little bit of trouble following at home. And I apologize for my technology here. It is going to get better one day, I promise, but I just haven't had a chance to do it. But here is 97L, and you can see a very broad center of circulation. This is Puerto Rico right here. So it's about 250 miles southwest or south of the far western tip of Puerto Rico, south of the Mona Passage, and expected to continue in this direction. There's a flare up here the European is jumping on. I just don't see it developing. It's kind of in a weakness, what we call a col, C-O-L, that's formed in between upper level ridges. We see a little spin up here, 96L, just a few thunderstorms left with it, but getting blown away to the northeast from the actual center and unlikely to form. And then here's the circulation center of Pilar right in here. And that is kind of stalled at this point. It may come just a touch closer to the coast this afternoon before turning back out over the remainder of the week. So that's what we're tracking for you guys here. Looking at the water vapor imagery, it makes it a little clearer to see things. Upper level low right in here. Get my pen back out. Excuse me. Upper level low, which has kind of opened up into a trough right in here, producing that southwesterly flow aloft. That's killing 96L here. Even though there's plenty of moisture for it, there's just too much wind flow aloft. Then we see kind of a little bit of a weakness in here behind it, or not weakness, but a little bit of a ridge here. And as that ridge takes over and actually shifts west, it's going to keep 97L on a west to west-southwesterly path. The big question mark is where it ends up when it gets into here. Does that ridge continue to build and push it west-southwest? Because if it does that, nothing's going to come up into the Northwest Caribbean? Or does that ridge shrink and allow weakness to form somewhere in here and try to induce the storm to come more northward or even northeastward over time? And I still don't know the answer to that yet, but I am going to talk about at least some potential tracks after this weekend. Here you can see 96L, a little bit of a naked swirl. That's about it. Florida, just some southwesterly flow from that weakness that's moving through. And here you can see the remains of 96L. Ironically, it's actually going to re-strengthen, lose its tropical characteristics, and move quickly through the northern Atlantic for the second part of this week, impacting the UK as we head on into the end of this week and into the weekend. I will say this, though, 97L is definitely beginning to grow in size. And while it does not have that low-level center required for it to become a depression, by the time that does happen, it's going to have more size and mass to it, which means it's going to be something that I personally believe has a pretty good ceiling with it. Once it organizes, as it gets into this warm water south of Jamaica, I do personally think it's going to be stronger than what the majority of the global models will show, based on climatology and based on what we've seen this year. You can see right now, we're cycling through phases of thunderstorm development, but it's a big wet storm and continuing to grow. So as this gains that circulation center, it could intensify pretty quickly. I think it may take a few days to do that, but it could. That's if everything goes to plan here, which we have not seen much of this tropical season. Excuse me, folks. All right, so here is where the models have picked up the low-level center, or what could be the low-level center, and kind of how it's tracking. Basically making that left turn going due west. It'll go south of Hispaniola here the next 2 days, already pulling away from south of Puerto Rico, crossing south of the Dominican Republic tonight. Here's a look at the future track, and all of the tropical and global models that are tracking it show a bit more of a bend back towards the left, putting it basically right between Jamaica and Panama. It'll still be very wet on the northern side of this, so count on a lot of rain in Haiti, count on a lot of rain in Jamaica, and eventually the Cayman Islands. But the interesting thing is what happens when it gets over here, and that would be between 96 and 120 hours from this morning. So that time frame puts us out to about Friday afternoon, Friday night, early Saturday. There's some bend back towards the Northwest Caribbean where there'll be ample warm water for this to try to strengthen, or there's the potential where it gets stuck over land, which would be a worst case scenario for Central America, especially Honduras and Nicaragua, where we have some pretty tall mountains. If that's the case, then flooding is going to be a big problem, but this will not find its way back into the Northwest Caribbean in the same state. Model intensity forecasts, again, with an early system, you're going to see a ton of spread. Yes, there's certainly a high ceiling on this category 4. It's being shown here on the HWRF, and I'll show you that possibility here. But you can see spread is very big after we get past Friday. Generally speaking, the model average takes it right into the center of Nicaragua. If you remember, Nicaragua got hit hard by 2 category 4 hurricanes just 3 years ago in November. I believe it was Eta and Iota. Both had winds around 140 to 150 miles per hour. And generally speaking, this is heading kind of in that same direction. So it's not a good scenario no matter what. But we don't know yet how strong it'll be, where it'll end up. There are several ensemble solutions. You can see this duller orange color that pull it through Honduras and then back into the Northwest Caribbean. If that's the case, then the level of uncertainty grows, because Florida then gets into the mix, Cuba gets into the mix, the Yucatan gets into the mix. We just don't know at this point. That's still going to be between 7 and 14 days away. Due to the weaker steering currents that may develop in here. There's also a decent chance it heads westward and fades and tries to reform in the Eastern Pacific, or comes up and moves through the rest of Central America, causing some tremendous, potentially catastrophic flooding. The GEFS, this is the GFS ensemble. You see multiple solutions and scenarios. All of them continue the storm west. We see some very strong solutions here, which would be a very bad situation for Honduras and Nicaragua. We see weaker solutions down in here, which would still be bad as far as rain, but not so much the wind. And we do see the potential opening for it to try to turn northward, maybe affect the Yucatan, Belize, Cuba, possibly even South Florida. But I don't want to throw Florida out there yet as a high chance. This is still a low probability chance for something that hasn't even formed yet. Let's take a look at the HWRF. This is from tropicaltidbits.com. I would show you HAFS models, but they are not yet latching onto the circulation and really even tracking the system. They're coming and going with it. So give it a day and I'll have more for you. This is an aggressive solution. I don't necessarily think it develops this quickly, but this is Puerto Rico. This is Hispaniola. And here you can see the center this time tomorrow morning is a weaker tropical storm. It continues westward and then starts to take off when it goes south of Jamaica. And this is Thursday morning as a stronger tropical storm. And as we head to Thursday night and Friday, it is showing potentially a hurricane. Vince would be the next name on the list. So that could happen as soon as late Thursday night, early Friday morning. Unfortunately, this model continues to incite some violence. It shows a strengthening system heading towards northeastern Nicaragua and southeast Honduras, very close to where Eta and Iota hit back in that crazy season of 2020. That is a possibility. I'm not predicting this will be a category 4 as it comes in here, but the HWRF certainly is showing that. There are other models I'll show you that are not even close to that. So there's still a lot of potential to kind of iron out with this. Here's a look at the GFS model from yesterday, and you can see taking it awfully far south towards Nicaragua and then trying to turn it up towards the Northwest Caribbean, but kind of looping around here. Just a very uncertain future here, but the model has shifted quite a bit. And the latest run that I'll show you, and I'm going to zoom in a minute here to show you guys this. The latest run takes it into the same area, but kills it basically over the Yucatan. It tries to maybe form something behind it. But again, there's just way too much time between now and then. Here's a look at the rest of the Atlantic. You see this is 96L here merging with a front. Look how quickly it blows up east of Newfoundland on Thursday and then zips quickly across the Atlantic heading into Friday night, early Saturday, making landfall in southwestern England. That follows with a storm ahead of it, which is going to be very deep. So we're going to get a 1-2 punch here across Western Europe. Ciarán is it's an Irish name. That is the name being given to this first system. I don't know what the D name is for this one, but kind of a 1-2 punch coming for Western Europe. And that obviously is of concern for those who may be watching in that area. You can see zoomed in, here's Pilar already set to turn away and weaken here in the next couple of days. Here you can see this was the run from yesterday. A tropical storm moving into Nicaragua, re-emerging north of Honduras, and then turning through the northwestern Caribbean and stalling for a few days. And that's a possibility as well as steering currents get weak. The GFS gets, I think, way too aggressive here and still has a powerful storm somewhere around the 14th and 15th. I just don't know if that's going to happen. If you look at the latest run, it has it in the same area, but has a much different future coming for it here over the second part of the weekend and early next week. It drifts it kind of towards the Yucatan, meaning it'll be wet next week around Cancun and Cozumel. But after that, it may just get killed by this next front pushing south, producing northerly wind shear over the system. So we just don't know yet. I can share all the crazy models in the world, but in my history in this profession, I will tell you, when you have a model that gets run past a week, we just don't really know what's going to happen until that system forms and forms a clear path. We've just learned our lesson many times that the future still is very uncertain in tropical forecasting. Here's the upper level pattern that produces this westerly shift. You can see this is a big area of high pressure. Let me get my pen and circle that for you guys to follow at home here or wherever you're watching from. Big area of high pressure here over the southern Gulf, South Florida, and the Southwest Atlantic. And that is not going to budge through the weekend. So that produces a flow that's actually favorable for the system to develop and head kind of east-southeastward. Now, over time, as we go beyond into next week, that ridge starts to fade. And the big question mark here, and sorry, I can't draw and do what I want. I'm going to look for new software. The big question is, do we have a ridge right here? And do we have another ridge right here and a weakness for this to turn north towards Florida and Cuba? Or does this ridge temporarily yield to allow the system into Central America and then build back to the east here? And if that happens, then this system gets stuck in here somewhere. It may get stuck over land and die. It may get stuck back over the warm water where we have not seen anything this tropical season next week. If it does that, then we have a potential for a bigger system in here. We just don't know yet. So we're trying to track high pressure ridges a week in advance when we don't even know when this next storm is exactly going to come into the Pac Northwest. So there's still a lot of uncertainty with this. And I don't want people to get too caught up in it. Even though I can show you model solutions, we just don't really know. The Canadian model ensembles show this track through Nicaragua, then coming back out over the Yucatan as a much weaker system. This green indicates maybe a depression or a low-end tropical storm. It does try to bring it into Southwest Florida. Maybe we'll actually get some welcome rain if this is right. This is actually not a bad forecast for Florida. We do need some rain down there. It's not a strong system. But unfortunately, we could be getting a little bit too much of what we really need here. Unfortunately here, if you are planning trips to Belize or Cancun, especially south of Cancun, significant rain is a potential problem here right through the next week and over the next 7 days, 174 hours. We see a high ceiling amount of 35 inches of rain somewhere here north of Honduras, or maybe over the northern part of Honduras, and amounts of 10 to 20 inches over a good chunk of Central America here. Over Hispaniola, Jamaica, and Cuba, not so much the wind that's the problem, but the rain. We do see potential amounts of 2 to 6 inches of rain with higher amounts in the mountains. We also can see a lot of rain over parts of Mexico and on the Pacific side here of El Salvador, Honduras, as well as Nicaragua, potentially 2 to 3 feet of rain, which is certainly not going to be a good thing. The European ensemble, you see it struggling with the initialization of this. It has two different features trying to merge into one. It does show kind of a west-southwesterly track, but because we have competing systems, it never makes it past low-end tropical storm strength. And as a result, we may have something that continues into the Pacific, and we do have a couple of solutions heading back up towards Belize early next week. And it's just until this forms, we don't really know yet what's going to happen. So stay tuned, but the GFS obviously more aggressive up in here than the European, not a surprise. And then as we look at Western Europe, we have bigger troubles here with our big storm, Ciarán, heading towards southwestern England, towards the Brittany section of France, and maybe affecting the far southeastern coast of Ireland as well. Wales could get the brunt of this system, but the strongest wind should be going through the English Channel. This is storm one. This is around 6 in the morning on Thursday, local time in Western Europe. That should move away by Thursday night, Friday morning. The next one comes through and batters France and maybe the southwestern part of UK here early in the day on Saturday, and then that moves out. So this will be two of the most intense storms this time of the year that Western Europe potentially could be dealing with here. Here's a closer look at our storms. Here you can see 959 millibars, a very deep system heading right towards the southwestern tip of England. The strongest winds will be south and east, bashing Brittany here, coming right through the English Channel, a 953 low here as we get to 3 in the morning on Thursday. That will eventually lift away east of London Thursday afternoon. It'll spin itself down. Then, unfortunately, the next one moves in south of Ireland here at 9 a.m. on Saturday and into the UK and Wales and southwestern England here early in the day, Saturday through about lunchtime. So two significant storms getting ready to batter portions of Western Europe with wind speeds potentially on the south coast of England of over 100 kilometers per hour, maybe even up to about 130 kilometers per hour over the western tip of Brittany in France here. That's with the first system, and the system behind it will be almost as strong. Let's look real quick at the Eastern Pacific. Disturbance here, not likely to form. Tropical storm Pilar here, southwest of El Salvador, south of Guatemala, kind of stuck for the time being. You can see there's decent convection. You can also see there's some wind shear getting into this, keeping it from forming the way that we saw Otis form. So good news there. Bad news, very heavy rain in El Salvador, bright colors pushing northward towards this country. We will have flooding challenges with this. But the good news is that after 24 hours, it should turn away and move quickly westward over cooler water and eventually weaken. Real quick, let's look at the U.S. This looks awful, but really it's just a major area dealing with its first cold snap of the season. Freeze warnings are in purple from the Great Lakes down through central Texas and Louisiana. Red flag warning, that could be significant for wildfires in the central Gulf states where it's been very dry. And we have a freeze watch from near Philly and Scranton all the way down into southeast Alabama and probably as well down into here. That is for tomorrow night, not for tonight. We also have some winter weather advisories over the upper Midwest and in California, some stronger winds. We have to watch out for some wildfire potential there as well due to the Santa Ana that's forming. Here's a look at the GFS real quick. Low pressure moving up the East Coast and a little bit of a low pressure system tracking through the Great Lakes today and tonight. Then we have quieter weather for tomorrow and Thursday. System moves into the west this weekend. And then across the upper Midwest, we'll have more snow in the same places of the UP and Wisconsin, as well as in Ontario and Quebec. See that low track actually goes north. This looks familiar as we saw that a lot last winter where it was mild enough for just rain in the East Coast. There's not going to be a lot of moisture with this in the East, but we could see some light rain Sunday and Sunday night, more likely Monday into Tuesday in the Southeast. Then another shot of cool air comes behind it, but not a bad weather pattern at this point. I've seen some posts on social media of like a crushing storm coming up the East Coast. I just don't see enough support for that for the time being. We'll watch. as obviously with warm waters and colder air coming down, there's obviously the potential for something. But right now, I don't see a definite answer for that to actually happen. Here's a NAM for today. Snow showers dropping through the Great Lakes, some light rain developing here across portions of the Carolinas, southeastern Virginia, heading up into the mid-Atlantic region this evening. For those of you that are planning to be outside between 6 and 10 or 6 and 10 tonight, you're probably going to get wet in this region here, but then things will move away. Could actually see a little bit of snow tomorrow morning. I'm going to zoom in and show that to you guys here a little bit closer here, but a little bit of snow expected here in the upper Midwest this morning, spreading south and east. There could actually be a little bit of thunder and lightning as this comes through off of Lake Michigan. Much warmer water creates instability. We see low clouds, but we see some elevated convection. So there could be some lightning strikes in here across southwestern Michigan, northwest Indiana, but this is going to move pretty quickly. And this is late this evening, snow showers in western New York, western PA, and even some mountain snows all the way down into the Smokies here. We could see a little bit of wet snow tomorrow morning in the Hudson Valley. You got to get well north and west of New York City for that to happen, also north and west of Boston. But this is 10 a.m. tomorrow. We could see some light snow in areas that have not seen a whole lot of snow over the last couple of winters here. But that should move away by tomorrow night, leading to some quieter weather aside from some light lake effect here tomorrow night into Thursday morning. Snow totals. This is from the National Weather Service. We do see the potential for 3 to 6 inches here in upper Michigan, 2 to 4 in northwest Wisconsin, 2 to 4 in western Michigan, lighter amounts, but even Chicago's northern suburbs could see over an inch of snow today into the early afternoon. And then shifting eastward here, we can see totals, especially tonight and tomorrow, of 3 to 6 inches in the Lake Erie snowbelt, 1 to 2 inches in the Ontario snowbelt, and even up to an inch or so at the ski resorts in West Virginia, Maryland, and southwestern Pennsylvania. Rain totals, especially this evening, light amounts from the upstate of South Carolina right on up into the Delmarva here, but we could see half an inch around Virginia Beach, up to Chincoteague, even up to near Wildwood, New Jersey. But that should move away here pretty quickly. Temperatures this evening around 7 o'clock are going to tumble. 40s for the most part across this entire area. Still a little bit warmer towards Savannah and the low country, 60s and low 70s, but not for long. And freezing temperatures around 7 around the greater Chicagoland area, especially away from the lake, yielding to overnight lows tonight, well into the 20s, probably some teens here in the mountains with some light snow falling. Freezing temperatures, though, across a good chunk of the country, especially the east, I should say. All right, well, I got to run, but thank you all so much for watching today. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. It's a blessing to be able to connect with all of you today. I don't take that lightly, and I give all the credit to God. He has given me this strength to share with you all my gift as a meteorologist. The Lord is my shepherd, Psalm 23. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I understand some of you are probably not believers, and that's okay. I was not for about 30 years, but I realized I was in that valley for a long time in my 20s of the shadow of death. Yes, I was not on deathbed or anything like that. I was actually doing pretty well for myself, but I was putting my worth in all the dark things, in the, oh, I'm chasing the promotion, I'm chasing customers, I'm chasing the dollar bill. My worth is based on how many friends I have, how many hours I work, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, I got to a point where my heart softened, and I was able to see that things that I was really placing my value in were not that valuable in God's eyes. In God's eyes, all of the blessings were coming from above. And I was fortunate enough to accept Jesus as my Savior, Jesus Christ as my Savior, understanding that my worth is in him and not in what I was seeing, in what the world maybe was seeing in me. But walking through the valley of the shadow of death, a lot of people may be walking through the valley, especially tonight, but knowing that with God, there's no evil to fear. Instead, God is there to comfort with his rod and his staff and to prepare a cup that runs over for those that truly do believe in him. So I wanted to share that encouragement with you, no matter what you're going through. And I understand if it's something that's extremely difficult, like a health challenge, a money challenge, loss of family members, but just know that if you do accept God, that he has promised for those of you that do believe that you will one day be with Jesus Christ in heaven and live eternally and fruitfully and no longer go through these valleys in this time. So I wanted to share that word of encouragement with you, and I would love to pray for you no matter what your situation may be today. I will catch up with you all tomorrow morning. I hope you have a blessed Tuesday, and please enjoy this final day of October as it's starting to get colder here in the East. God bless you all. See you then.